last US military plane left Kabul this week, ending a 20-year war in Afghanistan that Australia was involved in. President Joe Biden blamed Donald Trump for America's chaotic withdrawal, arguing they had to follow the former president's agreement. However, the Joint Chief Chairman, General Mark Milley, says cooperation with the Taliban to defeat ISIS-K is possible, as he reminded people of the pain and suffering issued with war.
This is tough stuff. War is hard. It's vicious, it's brutal, it's unforgiving. And yes, we all have pain and anger. And when we see what has unfolded over the last 20 years and over the last 20 days, that creates pain and anger. And mine comes from 242 of my soldiers killed in action over 20 years in Iraq and Afghanistan. So yeah, I have that.
Live now to our contributor, Michael Ware. Michael, great to see you, and your expertise around this 20-year war is just so helpful. You know Mark Milley. What did you think of his comments today?
Yeah, I know General Milley from Iraq. He is about as tough as they get. And look, when I heard the General make those remarks today live, and when I just heard them now again in my ear, something inside me moved, because he's speaking to and for all 800,000 American service members who've served in Afghanistan. He's speaking for the 20,000 who were wounded in action, and he's speaking to the families of the 2,416 Americans that the military lost there. So, look, I know that General Milley is speaking to history. He's a keen student of history. But he doesn't back away from this mission. He understands what's at stake. And as you can tell, he clearly understands what's required. And, when he was speaking about America's second drone strike in Kabul to support the evacuation, which targeted a vehicle that the Pentagon says was explosive laden. Well, there, he made absolutely no apologies. He said that they were acting on very good intelligence. They had information that the Islamic State's branch in Afghanistan was going to use a specific vehicle being prepared in a specific house. They monitored that, he said, through a variety of means. He said all the criteria for engagement was met, and so we struck. Now, we also know that a number of Afghan civilians, up to 10, were also killed. Many of them, maybe as many as 5 children. But as you can tell from General Milley's remarks, that's a part of war. The American military, like the Australian military, doesn't just bend over backwards. It moves heaven and earth to avoid civilian casualties. You have no idea the processes they go through before they strike a target. But at the end of the day, sometimes there's no avoiding.
And he's very pragmatic.
Like that. So
it is, and you do see them, and we've seen them over 20 years in Afghanistan. It's been the subject of the Brereton inquiry here. But General Milley is also a pragmatist, it would seem, talking about the reality of the Taliban and its surviving, essentially saying, isn't he, that better the devil you know, and it's the Taliban that we know that is essentially, one rung ahead of ISIS-K. Do, veterans who fought against the Taliban, who think they're evil, who think their treatment of women is the worst thing they've ever seen, that they need to reconcile that we now need the Taliban to maintain some kind of order in Afghanistan?
Well, that is the sad reality. I mean, look, it's indisputable fact that the Taliban is the new government of Afghanistan. And in fact, they're holding a conference right now in Kandahar to outline the shape of that government. But where the West and where America most likely needs the Taliban is in targeting the Islamic State. Because as Seth Jones, and very good former advisor to US Special Operations Command there in Afghanistan, said that America's on-the-ground intelligence gathering architecture is gone. So beyond signals intelligence, intercepts and listening devices and watching from the sky, I mean, they don't have the assets they need on the ground. And that's really what's demanded in a counter-terrorism fight. So when the Islamic State hit that checkpoint at Kabul airport with a suicide bomber, killing 13 American service members and up to 170 Afghan civilians, in a weird kind of way, they did the Taliban a favour, because it highlighted to the West why perhaps they might need the Taliban in the fight against the Islamic State, because we simply don't know where they are. And the Secretary of Defence today, when he was asked, will we cooperate with the Islamic State, with the Taliban in targeting the Islamic State? And the Secretary said, look, let's not make leaps of logic. It's too hard yet to see where this is going to go. But General Milley, when he was asked the same question, will America end up working with the Taliban to target the Islamic State? His response was, it's possible. Now, we've done it before. We did it in Iraq. When the insurgency emerged and was fighting the Americans for 4 or 5 years, it took all that time until a peace could be made between the Americans and the insurgents. And the insurgent war in Iraq stopped at that point. But the war against the Islamic State continued. The problem was America needed to target them. And it was the insurgents in Iraq who knew where the Islamic State was sleeping and who did not follow the rules of engagement. So in Iraq, we saw the Islamic State wake up the next morning dead because we cooperated with a former enemy. So the precedent is there time and time again. And quite frankly, it's in both the countries' interests. Because as they say in geopolitics, there's no such thing as friends, there's only national interests. And arguably, it's in America's and the Taliban's interests to at least find some kind of accommodation when it comes to the Islamic State. Well, that's yet to be seen.
Never a truer word spoken, and that has been on full display this week. We need a full hour to talk to you, but we will speak to you again soon. Michael Ware, thanks.